everyone. Thanks for coming on and listening to Is Your Way in Your Way podcast. And I'm your host, Cassandra Crawley Mayo. And for my new listeners out there, let me share with you what this podcast is all about. It's actually for those individuals who are stuck, individuals that are ready to move forward in their lives. They like to do something different, but they're stagnant and they can't figure out what is going on. So, in other words, it's time for us to support you and encourage you to pivot away from those roadblocks and move toward your purpose-filled life of hopes and aspirations. And today we have a special guest on that is going to actually talk to some of my listeners who I've heard and gotten emails from that they've kind of gotten out of their way a little bit. They started their business, they've been promoted. There's a couple of individuals who are now general managers to an organization. Some are DMs to district managers to an organization. Also, I heard from somebody who just started their house cleaning business finally, and I think that's great. So today we're going to talk about something a little different, because once you get to where you want to go, then what you want to do is grow and be an authority and scale impact. And who better to talk about that is our special guest today. And her name is Beate Chelette. And I'd like to welcome you to Is Your Way in Your Way. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much for having me, Cassandra. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. Before we get started, but let me repeat today again what the title of this podcast is, because we talk about topics for what I would say for business and personal growth. And this also will enable you to do a little self-reflection as well. So our title today is The Roadmap to Grow Authority and Scale Impact. And what I'd like to do is I'm going to share a bit about Beate, just so you get to know her a tiny bit until we delve into the interview. Beate Chelette is the growth architect and founder of the Women's Code, crafts strategies and blueprints for visionary leaders to maximize profit and scale impact. She's a first generation immigrant who turned her passion for photography into a global business. She overcame 135,000 in debt as a single parent. And she recognized as one of the 100 top global thought leaders in 2021. She's also one of 50 must follow women entrepreneurs by Huffington Post. She's the author of an award winning Happy Woman, Happy World: How to Go from Overwhelmed to Awesome. Beate's expertise empowers clients like Amazon, Chevron, and Johnson to become industry authorities and grow their influence. Wow, that's a lot.
It always sounds like a lot when somebody goes through all the accolades and the decades of being in business. So don't be intimidated, everyone. This might mean that I'm way older than you think I am.
Well, we're going to find out, huh? Well, my first question to you, and a lot of my listeners like to know, like, what was your backstory until you had this passion for photography, and you turned that passion into what I call a highly successful global business that you eventually, and I didn't talk about this in the bio, you sold to Bill Gates in a multi-million-dollar deal. What was going on with you before all of that had happened?
Yeah, I mean, the story really is not a princess story. So the story does not go, I woke up a princess and then I was catered to my entire life. And then somebody says, would you like to be queen? And I was inaugurated, and that was that. My story is the unruly child from Germany that had a hard time fitting in. I have some abuse in my childhood that I had then to spend decades to overcome and come to terms with, as far as how I feel about the world, lovability, do I belong, imposter syndrome, how do I
Mhm.
get myself out of a bad situation, how do I get over being a victim, how do I get over feeling like a victim, how do I take control over my life.
Mhm.
And When I left Germany in my early 20s. I had become a photographer. I was a photography editor at Elle Magazine in Germany. I had a good career very quickly in Germany in the photography
Mhm.
world, but
Mhm.
realized that when you have a position such as a photo editor at Elle Magazine, people will do all kinds of things for you just because of the position you're holding, not necessarily because of the person that you are. And
Yes.
that was the first time at 23 when I realized that there was something that I really needed to look deeper into and become the person that I wanted to be. I
Mm.
immigrated to the United States and made every mistake in the book. Found myself after, in about 10 years, a decade of just bad luck. Ended up
Mhm.
$135,000 in debt. Had no idea I was going to pay my bills. Had no idea I was going to feed my daughter. Had ended up being a single mom. I married an alcoholic and a pathological liar. Fitting right back into the story of my, whatever self abuse and
Mhm.
my insecurities.
Mm.
Had to overcome fires, floods, riots, earthquakes, September 11th, a lawsuit. I mean, the hits
Mm.
were not small hits. The hits were big hits, and they kept coming. And then eventually, I'm out cold. I'm $135,000 in debt, and I think this
Mhm.
is it. This is the end of it. And I
Mm. Mm.
go to Germany to drum up some business, Cassandra. And my father has a stroke, but my father did not have a stroke. My father had pancreatic cancer. And as
Mm.
I'm standing at the funeral and we literally just put his body in the ground, I get a phone call from my office in Los Angeles and I'm being told that we're losing the house.
Mm.
Uh, so it was I mean, at this point, it's game over. And I
Mhm.
had to really surrender. I fell on my knees. I raised my fist. I yelled at God. I said, if you have a plan, this would be a really excellent time to fill me
Mhm.
in. And then I
Mm.
had to surrender. And
Mm.
when I came back to Los Angeles, I had to call a bankruptcy attorney. I thought this was it. And then I get a letter from the White House.
Mm.
The White House, from
The
the
way.
president. Yes, from the president of the United States. And what I had done in my absolute desperation, and frankly, because my former mother-in-law was a nag about this, she always told me to write a letter to the president of the United States. She would say things like, he's the number one guy in the country. Why are you wasting
Mhm.
your time with anybody else?
Mhm.
Why don't you take it to the top guy? And I mean, who writes a letter to the president of the United States? I mean, is it the dumbest idea we've ever heard?
Oh, wow.
And then finally, I wrote the letter, Cassandra, just to get her out of my hair, right?
Mhm.
Because I just literally could not have this conversation anymore. Imagine my surprise when I get a letter from the White House.
Oh, wow.
And what it did, it put me in touch with the Small Business Administration. And it put me in touch with the second in command because they also got a letter from the White House. And so the gentleman, the deputy chief director of the entire SBA in Los Angeles County, which is a very large SBA,
Mhm.
he wanted to see what nutcase would write a letter to the president instead of picking up the phone and calling him
A small business,
directly,
right. Uh-huh.
which I could have done, but never even occurred to me.
Right.
And what happened is then they found me a bank that was able to restructure my debt into a 10-year fixed loan backed by the Small Business Administration,
Wow.
freed up my line of credit. 3 months later, I'm break even. 18 months later, I'm the world leader in my category in a Bill Gates company and comes and says, can you tell us how you do it? And I said, of course not. You want it, you buy it. And they say, how much do you want? I said, I want a couple millions. And they said, okay.
Wow, what a story. What a story. And you had every opportunity to be in your way, particularly because of your story. You have a hell of a story. And those listeners have stories such as that, and those types of stories sometimes makes you stagnant and makes you stuck. You just can't go on. And you with individual, not only did you get tired of hearing your mother-in-law tell you to write, but you did it. And action is critical. If somebody tells you to do something, you're like, okay, just to get her out of my hair, I'm going to go do it. So kudos to you. I am curious. Who was the president during that time?
George W. Bush.
Okay, he was in as his administration. Wow, that's great. That's a great story. The other question I want to hear: what you talked about the women's code? What is the woman's code?
Yeah, so the women's code I created after I sold my business to Bill Gates, and I was asked to become the senior director of photography for global entertainment. And I did, kind of knowing that it was going to be probably a hard challenge for an entrepreneur to now be in a corporate setting. And I was really shocked, Cassandra. I was shocked how women are treated in America in
Mm-hmm.
corporations. I was
Mm-hmm.
shocked at the absolute just lunatic advice you get. What's okay for the men, pardon me, what's okay for the women, that you would come in on Monday morning and something had been decided over the weekend you weren't
Right.
part of. They
Exactly.
went out golfing or to some event you were never even at the table and the decision has been made.
Right.
And I was appalled by that. So I realized that a lot of the women are operating from an understanding that there really are only 2% of CEO positions that are available for women. And
Mm-hmm.
instead of making that 2% a 50%, which it should be if we look at the distribution of men and women all over the world. I mean, we are about 50-50. I mean, women are 51%, so that technically makes us the majority.
Yeah.
But we
Mm-hmm.
keep talking like we are the minority. And so I said, well, we need to teach women on how to get away from thinking there's only 2% and then having to kill each other on the way there because we think that
Right.
only this much is available. And rather than get together and focus on how do we make 50% available. And that's how I created the Women's Code.
Okay. Yes, that is so right. I have, I have, as many of my listeners are aware, I was always the first, number one, first African American female, and in all my positions. And you just imagine me sitting in a room with all white males who didn't even listen to me.
Oh,
So
I can't even imagine. It's hard enough for a white woman. Let's just be really blunt here. It's
yeah,
hard enough for a cute, hot white woman, right?
right.
But I cannot even imagine. And we know the numbers for Black women. We know the numbers for Asian women who
Asian.
seem to
Mhm.
do a little bit better because there's a bias, an assumption that they're just smarter by nature just because
Yeah,
they're Asian. So every Asian is smarter than everybody
yeah.
else, which is
Hmm.
amazing to me. And we also know that Latinas traditionally get the lowest scores, even
Hmm.
even lower than Black women. So when we
Hmm.
look at these numbers, we can't but help and say what extraordinary nonsense this is.
Yeah.
You tell me that somebody just because of the color of their skin or the way they look, that they're smarter or dumber or more qualified or less qualified. But this goes back to the is your way in your way. What is the story that you're telling yourself?
Exactly.
And what is the story that's being commonly told?
Exactly. And one of my big ones was I was not good enough. I was just a quote. I was just a number. So
Oh,
I
yeah, 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 yeah. You're the token Black woman. Yes, yes,
yeah.
yes.
So
Mhm.
I definitely get it. Now, the title is The Roadmap to Grow Authority and Scale Impact. And when I read that, I think about strategy. Strategic thinking, just have a strategy. Me being an author, what's my strategy to grow my business? So I'd like for you to tell us exactly what is strategy. What is that?
Yeah, so strategy number one is a word that when I say that most people just want to run for the hills. Peop A lot of times we kind of know we need it and we know we need to be focused and we know we need to have clarity and we know we need to have a strategy to get somewhere. But as you said, there's a lot of questions. What even is it? So the way I look at strategy is very simple. You have to have an idea where you're going. That's the first question I ask everybody. What do you
Mhm.
want? And I'm sure, Cassandra, you do the same thing when
Yeah,
somebody works with you and
yeah,
hires you as a coach.
right.
It's like, what is it that you want? And that's where we already get the first set of complete blank stares. There is a saying, a proverb that says, if you don't know where you want to go, any way will get you there.
Yes.
And the objective, like when we talk about spirituality or mindset, we look at this from a perspective of the clarity of the goal and the desire to achieve it puts energy into motion. And this energy then creates these circumstances that then attract the things that need to fall into place to get
Mhm.
there. I
Mhm.
wanted to be really successful. I
Okay.
had a nagging mother-in-law who told me to write a letter to the president.
Mhm.
My judgment, my story says, that's ridiculous. How is this going to help? So
Right.
I boycotted the signal that was sent to me for what, 6 months,
Mhm.
because I was believing in my story, which is I know best. I don't know best. When
Right.
I finally took an action that was completely out of the ordinary or ridiculous, that's when things got into motion that I could not have ever even fathomed or put
Mhm.
into motion. So if
Mhm.
you think about it this way, I mean, you cannot say to anybody, oh, a letter that I wrote to the president of the United States then was seen by a person, was sent to this person at that time who was curious enough then to invite me and then to believe in me and all these events. I mean, you cannot make this stuff up.
Right.
This, I wasn't sourcing it. I was having the desire and I was taking the action on the desire, no matter how ridiculous it
Mhm.
was. And
Mhm.
that set the sourcing into motion. So when we look at how do we create a strategy, the strategy is that you first have to have this desire, this clarity of what do I want, right? So you can't say something like, I want to be very successful.
Right.
That's okay, but it's a little bit vague in
Mhm.
in my world. I'd
Mhm.
rather have you say, by the end of the year, I want to be at $150,000 and $250,000, and really focus on what that feels like, on how you what you would do with the money. You know, that you take your granddaughter or your daughter shopping, you go to the spa, you get your nails done by the good salon, you take a weekend in a nice
Mhm.
Ritz-Carlton resort, or you buy the camping van, whatever that might be for you, and get really clear on what the life looks like when you have achieved the goal. A lot
Mhm.
of people make this mistake now that they say, I want money, because they think money is the problem. Money is the vehicle of compensation,
Mhm.
not that's it. There's nothing
Right.
else to money. It's a vehicle of compensation. It's a value.
Mhm.
So you first need to figure out where it is that you want to go. Then we can say, now that I know that you want to make $150,000, $250,000, now I can help you with reverse engineering the strategy, because then we can look
Mhm.
at your skill set, then we can look at your career, we can look at what your abilities are, and
Mhm.
now we can reverse engineer that strategy step by step using a method that I call the 5-star success blueprint, to help you figure out what are the exact steps to get to this goal. But if
Okay.
you don't have that goal or that desire or that clearly defined objective to get to, there cannot be any strategy. That's why strategy is so critical, because strategy forces you to get clear what you want. But most people
Right.
are afraid.
Exactly. 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 And the other key is to take action. And that way they don't know what action to take because they're not clear on what it is that they want. And when I talk to some of my listeners or hear from some of my listeners, I was just very happy to hear that I had a listener that finally excuse me, that finally opened up a planning event organization. And what they wanted to do, event planner, and what they wanted to do was be the largest in the area. Um, and so by saying that, what after you find out that that's their goal, what you have those five essential. So what would be those five essentials for that individual that's in that type of that industry, the planning event industry?
Yeah, so there's two things we're talking about. So one tool I use is the 5-star success blueprint, and the other one are the three essential framework elements
Okay.
to create success. And so if we talk about the three essential framework elements first, so that is number one. We already talked about it. That's the strategy. You got to have the strategy.
Mhm.
Number two is growth. That is the clarity on how do I grow it? What are my methods? What are the actions that I need to take to grow
Mhm.
it? And the
Mhm.
third one we also just talked about is the mindset. Because
Mhm.
with these three pieces aligned, you have you know where you're going, you are committed to taking the actions that it takes to grow, and you're in the
Mhm.
mindset to consistently take these actions and keep that in front of your mindset. And kudos to your listener who opened her event planning business, because everything always starts with an idea
Right.
first.
Exactly.
Everything. You
Exactly.
have to have the idea, and then you can take the action and build the business.
Okay. Now, what about an individual that's solo, that's not really in an industry? And I use myself for an example. I'm an author. So, being an author, and I have a lot of clients that want to be authors. They want to, everybody likes to write a book, which is fine. How could that author grow their authority and impact their business as they're solo at the moment?
Well, there's a couple of things. So number one, were I now to talk to you or consult or coach you, I would immediately ask you, and we can do this so that we can make it real for your audience.
Right.
And I would say, well, if you know how to write books and you say other people are coming to you to help them write the book, is
Mhm.
that part of your business strategy? Is that something that you want to pursue to really build
Mhm.
that up?
Right.
And then you would say, what would you say to that? Is that part of a business that you're really wanting to build up in addition to this?
Yes.
Yes. So then I would say, well, so then the strategy is that you are a podcast host to get your message out.
Mhm.
So then we need to have clarity that the podcast is clearly aligned with the method of helping other people to identify that story,
Right.
to get the story out of them, to overcome the story and have a successful end result.
Right.
Because if we say you are specialized on authors that want to get their story out, but also change the outcome of the story to a more
Mhm.
successful story. So it's a transformational um, as a transformational author coach. Let's just make this
Okay.
up here, right? And I don't know if
Uh-huh.
it's true or not, but I'm
Mhm.
just making it up for
Mhm.
the sake that the audience knows on how this works. So then
Mhm.
we go and we say in the 5-star success blueprint, what's the first step? And it doesn't matter if you're by yourself or if you have a team.
Okay.
You go and you say, what's the first step? The first step is to say, what is the idea? What's the
Right.
idea?
Mhm.
And why is the idea different? Why are you the right person to do the idea? And who is the ideal audience for this idea? We flush this out
Mhm.
first because that
Okay.
determines what the business model is.
Okay.
The second step is then we move over to um, the offer. What is it that you need to offer to that person we just identify to solve that particular problem? What do
Mhm.
they need to hear from you that they pull the trigger? So if you then make an offer that says, here is our 12-week writing course. At the end of the 12 weeks, you will have written a book and you
Mhm.
will have examined your story and be able to rewrite the ending of the book.
Mhm.
So now we have a clear offer, and we might have
Right.
multiple offers, but let's just say we have this one
Yeah.
offer.
Okay.
With that, we go to the third step of the 5-star success blueprint, and that is, how do I create systems? Like, what is my vehicle, my system delivery? I get the message out via podcast, so you already have one of these vehicles in place. I need automation. I need a CRM. Where do I get my leads from? Where are these
Mhm.
people? How do I reach these people? How do I reach enough people? How do I bring them
Right.
into my funnel? How do I talk to them? How do I convert them? How do I teach them? So we're building these systems.
Mhm.
Once you've done that, you know what you're selling, you know who you're selling it to, you know why you're selling it, you know why it's you who's selling it, you have an offer that hits that target, you've now built your systems. Now we go to team building. Now we look at who do we need to operate those systems that bring
Mhm.
the offer that solves the problem to the client. And
Right.
then finally we go to step number 3, step number 5, which is you as a leader. Then we ask, who do you need to be
Mhm.
to operate that business with those people that operate your systems, that take the offer and bring that offer to the clients, that we offer a transformation to solve their problems. And that's the
Okay.
5-star success blueprint. That's how we build it up. And then we know exactly what actions we need to take.
Right. That's good. And I like the word transformation because it's not about inspiration. We can be inspired, but that doesn't mean that we'll really do anything. We're just inspired. So, and I love that. And also, I have my audience where they're kind of solo. No, there's somebody that I have that wants to open a hair salon, or or just want to rent a booth and be an authority figure on hair. So I just wanted them to know and to hear that you don't it's an industry, but yet you're the solo in the industry, and you can be impactful in your industry. Now let me move to being overwhelmed. How can what Okay, so we're overwhelmed, and when we're overwhelmed, we kind of lose that authority. We get intimidated. We got so much going on. We don't know what to do next. How do you tackle that?
Yeah, well, how to get from overwhelmed to awesome, which is the subtitle of my book. So my book is called Happy Woman, Happy World,
Mm-hmm.
how your foolproof fix on how to get from overwhelmed to awesome. And in my book, I have a concept that I call egoism. And what I have recognized is that women have a tendency to look at our 10 best friends,
Mm-hmm.
and we somehow want to construct ourselves as the top 10 of all of our friends. So we may
Mm-hmm.
have a friend who is a workout fanatic and she has an amazing body. So
Okay.
now we know that it's possible. Now we want to have a body like her.
Right.
Then we have a friend who is a chef. I mean, I want to be invited to her house all the time. Organic food. I mean, the way she cooks, unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
So now that I see that it's possible, now I also want to be as good of a chef as she is
Right.
because I know it's possible. Now I go to my next friend and she is the best mother, and her kids love her and they hang out and she's so amazing. Now I'm going like, well, I see it's possible. So now I need to be a mother like her.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I'm piling up the best of everybody I know, and
Mm-hmm.
that becomes the expectation of myself.
Mm.
So this is where the buzzer goes off
Yeah.
and makes that sound where
Mm-hmm.
you just literally miss the mark,
Right.
because your friend who is that great organic chef is really not very clean. When you go to her house, it's a little bit messy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's dust bunnies in the corner, but the food's great.
Yeah.
Your friend that's the workout maven, well, she has to put a lot of time and energy into her workout. So sometimes you suspect she may be a little bit narcissistic, and the husband has to put in a lot of work for the kids because she's
Right.
always at the gym,
Exactly.
but she does have the great body. So we forget the other part because we think that we somehow can have all these different items and then become this superhuman person
Mm-hmm.
that has all these things, and it's enough to keep you overwhelmed in a perpetual state. So in
Mm-hmm.
the book, which I really recommend all of your listeners to get, I
Okay.
talk about how do you combat that. And I have a concept called egoism where I teach you exactly on what the different rhythms are, how to figure out which rhythm you are in. And then if you don't like the rhythm you are in, let's say you are in a tragedy or in a transformational or in a spiritual rhythm, but you want to be in a career rhythm, what you can do to really initiate that transformation again, on how to get from where you are right now to really take control over where you want to go.
Exactly. I love that. I love that because I have a chapter in my book about comparison. And when you said that, that's kind of what we do. We compare ourselves to this person, that person. And I loved it when you said your friends. They're individuals that they stay online with social media so much, they compare themselves to them. And then, as you indicated, they're just all over the place. I want to be like them. Well, let me try this. Well, let me get my hair like this. Well, maybe I can get a man that looks like this. They're just all over the board. So I love that, because if people think about why they get overwhelmed, they're obviously not focused on what it is at hand that they need to accomplish. So I love the way you said that, and I definitely have to get your book. So you call it the overwhelm in your book, and I'm calling it comparison. So I loved your perspective on that. That was great. Thank you. Um, Also, I want to know how success resides at the intersection of strategy and spirituality.
Yeah, that's a topic that I increasingly am more and more and more interested in. I have found, as somebody who's made millions,
Mm-hmm.
that we always think that money is the answer to all of our problems. Now, let me be very clear. Money solves a lot of problems.
Yeah.
but it doesn't solve all of your problems.
Mhm.
You are still the same person, and your value system, whatever that is the same. Hopefully, um, that like it to me, it's a vehicle, and it made sure that I could buy a house. It made sure that I could put my daughter through college. It makes sure that I can support causes and things that are important to me,
Mhm.
but it certainly isn't the answer to everything.
Right.
When I look at people who are very successful, and I speak to a lot of very successful people,
Mhm.
the laws of spirituality and the laws of science and physics are all the same. The deeper you go into the subject, the more you see that if we believe and trust that what's happening in nature, the
Mhm.
more we are aligned. I'm going to give you an example for your audience. Now, imagine you're going for a walk and there's a beautiful oak tree, but the oak tree is unlike any other oak tree. The oak tree says, who needs all this stress with all the leaves? You
Mhm.
know what? Let's do this. I'm only going to do 100 leaves.
Mhm.
We're going to see how it goes. If the squirrels come, the kids are playing, people are admiring my 100 leaves, I have proof of concept, then I'm going to do a slow rollout over the next couple of months because otherwise it's too stressful for me.
Mhm.
Or you see the squirrel and the squirrel goes like, winter,
Yeah.
nonsense. I don't believe it. Prove it to me that there's going to be winter. I'm not going to take care of any food. When
Mhm.
it gets cold, I'll deal with it.
Yeah.
Says no tree and says no squirrel ever. What happens in nature is that there is a cadence, a rhythm in which things are happening. And it's not that the tree then in the fall goes, oh my God, look at me. I lost all my trees. What are
Right.
people supposed to think? I'm fully naked here. I'm completely exposed.
Yeah.
Everybody can see this. What are people, I'm a complete failure. This happens to me every single year. I lose my leaves. I don't know what the heck is wrong with me. Why can't I not be a good tree, like the
Right.
evergreen tree? I mean, this just doesn't happen. So why do we believe that our concepts of what it is supposed to be is supposed to work when there's laws that rule it differently somewhere else? So
Mhm.
we make stuff up and then we call it a law, but it is a law that doesn't exist and therefore it cannot work. So I found that the deeper we are going into spirituality and
Mhm.
understanding how these laws work, the law of reciprocity, um, the law of attraction, which really is a lower law, um, but it is about an energetic vibration of how to attract things. The deeper we go into that, the more successful people typically are. Most of the people that I know have a spiritual practice. They
Mhm.
meditate, they do
Mhm.
yoga, they practice what I call clean thinking, and
Mhm.
they don't believe everything they think,
Mm. Mhm.
and they don't give it any meaning. And the more you understand that it all starts with your mind and what you believe in and what you think in and what you say and what you watch and what you do. If you are running around all day long and tell me it's so difficult and you're so stressed out and life is so hard, you are creating this for yourself. You may not desire that.
Mhm.
You may desire the opposite, but because
Mhm.
you speak of it, you create it.
Mhm.
So, this is the part about spirituality that is the game changer, if you so want to, when you feel the vibration of something that makes you feel really good, and you take that thought and you expand it further and further and further and further. And then you have the strategy attached to it to say, I know what I want. I got my mindset clear. I know where I'm going. Now I'm taking the actions. Now I have the strategy that I follow. And now things can move forward. So that's why I believe spirituality and strategy go hand in hand.
Mhm. Beate, it's the mindset to me that just controls so much. It can destroy you. I mean, it's unbelievable, and I believe everybody, even successful individuals, have mindset challenges. And by saying that, even my audience that are in their way, that's what it's all about. They're in their way. They need to get out of their way in order to do what it is that they've been wanting to do for so long. They're individuals that have gotten, well, first of all, that they have this idea they want to do this, but they're stuck at it. And then time passes by, and then, just time doesn't stop for anything. And as you indicated earlier, if you take action on it. So my question is, and plus what you have been through in your life, I'm certain you had mindset challenges as well. What are some of the tools or resources that you've used to change that mindset to be the individual that you are? And as you indicated, I'm not a perfect person. Nobody's perfect. But what was the strategy for that to help you with your mindset?
Yeah, and I'm gonna start this with a story, with an example, a very, very, very personal example.
Okay.
I have, done a very deep spiritual journey a couple months ago, and I knew that I had childhood abuse, but I didn't realize the extent of it until I gave my permission to go into the spiritual journey and really
Mm-hmm.
remember and allow this trauma kind of to resurface in order to resolve it. And before I went, about 3-4 weeks before, my mother, who is the abuser, uh,
Mm-hmm.
calls me out of the blue and says, when you were a baby, my doctor didn't like fat babies, so I didn't feed you enough.
Mm-hmm.
And you were always whimpering at night. And
Mm-hmm.
eventually I realized I had to give you more food, and then you slept through the night. And I'm listening to this, Cassandra, and I'm going like, what mother in their own right mind
Yeah.
would tell their adult child, "Hey, by the way, I didn't start abusing you when you were 6. I started abusing you when you were an
Right.
infant."
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm sitting there, and so this part of the story is my story of my abuse is worse, is bigger, and started much earlier than I knew. Then I did my spiritual journey, and I saw my mother as a World War II child who lost a father when she was 10, who was raised by an unbelievably abusive woman who
Mm-hmm.
was abused severely herself. So there's a generational trauma
Yeah.
pattern, who had no idea how to be a mother, had no idea what to do. Her father was in the Navy, so by the nature of what happened in Germany back then, they were Nazis.
Right.
Everybody was a Nazi in Germany, or you would be dead.
Right.
And it was an ideology that she grew up in. So she was told that women are worthless, that
Mm-hmm.
women have to do what men tell them, and that doctors are gods in white. And they literally were called gods in white. So now, what is the other side of this story? Remember, my story is the abuse story.
Right.
Her story is, I'm told by the authority what to do. I'm in conflict. I am intuitively knowing that what I'm being told is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I, because I'm such an amazing, powerful, wonderful person, defy this authority order
Mm-hmm.
behind their back at great risk to myself,
Mm-hmm.
and I feed my child more. Aren't I an amazing mother?
Mm-hmm.
Which story is true? I ask your audience. And the answer is both.
Mm-hmm.
Both
Right.
stories are true. It
Mm-hmm.
just depends on what meaning you want to give it. So if I live in this victim mode on why it's so hard to find love, why I wasn't successful for a very long time, why I still struggle with, opening up and really trusting other people, I can cite my abuse story as the reason. Everybody will go and say, "Yep, completely get it. Understandable."
Right.
Or I can change the story and say, this story does not serve me anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I have compassion and empathy for what my mother went through.
Yeah.
I was still victimized by her. I was still abused by her. She's still an abuser, but I will not live as a victim.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
was victimized, but I don't live as a victim.
Mm-hmm.
So I recognize the story for what the story is, that there is
Mm-hmm.
my side and her side. I have compassion for her side, but that's hers to solve, not mine.
Mm-hmm.
Mine to solve is mine. My mother's not going to change. My mother's no memory of any of this. My mother has completely eradicated this, like 20 years of my life. She just threw out the door because it's too painful for her to go there. But
Mhm.
that's her choice, that's not my choice. And
Right.
I certainly am not going to force her to remember because she's not going to. But
Right.
what I am doing is I'm telling the story for myself. And if you talk about how to get out of your own way, that's how you get out of your own way. You
Mhm.
look at the story and you say, what here is really true?
Right.
What's true? What's the truth in this?
Right.
And what meaning does this have to me? Because if I give up the victim and the unloved child and the abused child, then I would have to give up a story that I believed for what, 30 years of my life.
Right. Mhm.
And then
Mhm.
what would that mean? That would mean I have to take responsibility for every action I took because then it's
Mhm.
not the result of the abuse, then it's a result of a decision that I made. I made the decision because I didn't know any better. But
Right.
now, at what point are you going to let that go?
Right. Right. And right. And to me, that sounds like it was a practice. Like you have to continue to change the narrative if the narrative is going to work for you.
Clean
Because
thinking, clean thinking, clean thinking. Is
right.
it true? Constantly asking yourself, what do I believe? What meaning do I give this? Is it true? Is it true? Is there another side of the story? If there was another side, what would that other side be? You constantly have to give yourself
Right.
permission to just go in and challenge yourself. And
Yeah.
then at some point, you got to let it go.
That's right. That's right. Oh my goodness. That was a great story. Um I love it when you say that your superpower is turning everything into executable. So explain that.
People have a tendency when it comes to strategy or
Mhm.
business or these types of stories to make it very complicated. And that
Yeah.
has a lot to do with a lot of the internet marketing nonsense that's out there where you're being sold on the one thing that makes everything fall in place. And what people don't realize that the whole internet marketing industry and everything that's out there is set up to have you to create a desire and then to fill that demand in a positioning for this one particular product. I'll give you an
Mhm.
example. So somebody says, if you would only speak in front of live audiences, then you would be in front of enough clients, and then you'd have so many clients that you'll be fine.
Mm.
Only once you've taken that course and now you know how to speak, the next affiliate offer comes in and says, "Yeah, but how do you get the leads to convert
Right.
into your list?" And
Yeah.
so you now there's an offer on how to create a product to convert
Mhm.
them onto your list. Then another person comes and says, "Hey, um, well, you need an actual real funnel because you need to segment these people that are coming in. You need to ask them all kinds of questions. So now you're buying another product." And somebody
Mhm.
says, "Yeah, but you still don't have any leads. How are you going to get the leads in?
Mhm.
You need a lead generation tool, and you need to run ads, and you need to do SEO and digital marketing." And
Mhm.
then you've done that, and then somebody says, "Yeah, but you really need to sell on a lower level an online course, and do you have a value letter?" And
Mhm.
next thing you know, it's 3 years later, $100,000 later, and you still don't have a
Still
business
don't. Yes.
because you don't have, a model. And so when I come in and I help people to say, "What is it that you do?
Mhm.
What's the business model that works for you? What do
Mhm.
you want? How do we reverse engineer this into an actual business model?" I have a client who's going through a program of mine right now. I have a program called Turn Your Talent into a Business.
Okay.
And he is in the program and he likes to go on trips. That's like that fills his soul and he always feels bad about it. I said, "Well, we need to make this part of your business model
Mhm.
because we don't have judgment
Right.
of if you crush it for 2 months, take a week off." But
Mhm.
then don't make it like feeling bad about it, then make it
Right.
deliberate, and then look at it from a perspective of balance and say, "I keep my work-life balance evaluated every 3 months,
Mm.
not every day, not every week, but I'm
Mhm.
okay with putting in 8 weeks of hard work, and then I'm playing a week, and then
Right.
I put in 8 weeks of hard work, and then I play for a week."
Right.
If you do it that way, we can build the business model any way you want. There is no one way that's better than another way.
Right.
It's your way. And that's what I help people with, is really architecting growth, which is why I'm a growth architect. And I
Mm-hmm.
do that specifically in the program, Turn Your Talent into a Business, where I help people to figure out, what is it that you do? How does this business model look like? And we do this about twice a year for 12 weeks. So it's a done with you program. So if anybody's interested in, they should definitely reach out
Yeah. Yeah.
and check this out. But that's the fastest way to the cash, is figure out what you're good at, what this looks like, what model works for you, and then we build it.
Right. Right. I love that. I like that. Yeah. I'd like to know who inspires you.
Uh, I'm inspired by many, many things. I'm inspired by smart people. I'm
Mhm.
inspired by crazy ideas, colorful personalities.
Mhm.
I I'm a bit of an information junkie, so
Mhm.
I read quite a bit, and I always want to know why things happen. Right now, my daughter had a baby, so I have a grandchild. So
Mhm.
Kiliana is her name. She inspires.
Congratulations.
Thank
Mhm.
you. She really inspires me because I get to see on, just the brain's ability to learn
Mhm.
so quickly, and how we overcomplicate things, and the wonderment that's in all the little things when you
Yeah.
see them for the first time, which we forget.
Yeah.
That really inspires me. And people inspire me. I,
Mhm.
I like people that really step out of the constraints of themselves
Mhm.
and say, I'm going to try something. That really inspires me. I love when the lights go on. I like when people become more successful than I am. I love
Mhm.
it when somebody, sends me a message. I just got a message 2 days ago from a client of mine, and she was at an event, and I had, before she went, I had given her one of my quotes, that, my own quote, and I said, "Don't ever ask for a seat at the table you're already sitting at."
Yeah. Mhm.
And she threw that back at me, and she says, "Oh my god, I lived off this line for the last 2 days, because I'm
Wow.
finally at this level, and I had to constantly remind myself I don't need to ask for a seat at the table because I'm already sitting here."
Wow. That's great. That's great. Um, my last question for you is, I'd like for you to, and you definitely given a lot of nuggets, but one thing, like advice to my listeners who have gotten out of their way, um, know they are vulnerable to getting back in their way. Okay, they got out of their way, they're doing their thing, they have this idea that they're mulling, so to speak, getting back in the way, that have not built strategies to build a scale impacts on. In other words, how would they keep their momentum, because they're doing what they want to do finally after all of that being in their way? Tell them, my listeners, how could they keep that momentum? What can they do to build and scale impact?
Discipline,
Mm,
practice,
okay.
spiritual practice. It's just not done with doing it once. You have to do this every single day. You have to read the right stuff. You have to control your thoughts. You have to figure out a meditation, or being still, or singing, or bicycling, or yoga, or working out, something that gets you in, or go out into nature. I have found that the best practice, that's why we talk about strategy and spirituality, is that it's not a one and done thing. This is a lifestyle.
Mhm.
And this lifestyle has to be done every single day to some extent. And I listen to podcasts excessively.
Mhm.
I do audible books. I listen to stuff when I'm hiking, when I'm driving, and I really try to keep myself constantly reminded of the stuff that I believe in, and
Mhm.
reinforce and reinforce and reinforce, so that my mind can attract what I'm wanting to attract.
Mm. Okay, that's good. Thank you. Thank you. Um, how can my listeners get in touch with you?
Yeah, so I have something actually very special for your listeners. I
Oh,
have created a quiz called What's Your Talent Worth? So
okay.
you go to what'syourtalentworth.com, but it's HTTP, not HTTPS, and that has something to do with a forwarding link. So it's whatsyourtalentworth.com. And it's a quiz, a mathematical calculation. And I developed a profit formula to take you through how much money you can make with the skill that you have right now in this market. And it is
Mhm.
amazingly accurate. So I
Mhm.
recommend everybody to do that. Whatsyourtalentworth.com.
Okay.
Take the quiz and really go and dive into how much money you can make. And then if the number you're making right now and the number that you could be making is not matched up, you really should give me a call.
Okay.
And then you go to uncoverysession.com and fill out a 15-minute session with me. And then we can talk about what we can do to help you to really get moving forward. But the most important advice I have for everybody, take action. As it's
Mhm.
exactly what you said, take action, move forward.
Mhm. 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 And another thing I think about all that you said is for individuals to know that they are not. You can't do this alone. You need support. A lot of people just sit and mull over. I got to do this. I have to do that. You don't have the skill set to do everything that you need to do. So it's
Yeah.
okay to reach out, and knowing who to reach out to, I think, is key as well.
100%. Yeah, and of course, get the book Happy Woman, Happy World if that
Yeah.
resonates with you, and understand and how to get out of overwhelmed. But I'm all over. As a growth architect in Beate Chelette, to my knowledge, I'm the actually only person with this name, and I'm easy to find. So reach out, drop in my DM, share a takeaway. Make sure you subscribe to Is Your Way in Your Way podcast wherever you pick up the show, and give Cassandra a 5-star review and subscribe and follow.
Okay. Thank you very much, Beate Chelette. I enjoyed this conversation, and I know my listeners have as well. And listeners out there, this was a full blown, um, perhaps different way of thinking for many of you. And I would encourage you to share this podcast. This podcast will be on all platforms, podcast platforms. And also, just so you're aware, this particular podcast will go live in the 1st of July. And I would just say to you again, please share. You know that Is Your Way in Your Way podcast on every Wednesday live at 1 p.m. I thank you all for listening. God bless you. Thank you very much, Beate. You were wonderful. And bye for now. Uh-oh. Just had a little technical difficulty, but that's okay. So you all know that I'm human. Thanks again.